you allow her to be and the girls to be the predators. It's a very different if you flipped the genders, and you had guys reaching out and like, well, like as 45 would say, grab them by the pussy,
Yeah.
and you have the girls grabbing guys out. And it's interesting how what would have been the responses?
Um, I mean, I think it's been funny to read, like the pre-publication reviews in places like Kirkus, and you have these people saying how horrible the people are. Like the reviewers are talking about the people in these stories, and it's like they very much feels like they're talking about you. And so it just kind of like the comments about the morality of this collection feels like they're talking about the morality of me, the human being, which is not. Like my friends and I, we would go to Santa Barbara and we would have fun making men uncomfortable because, we were cute young girls and we enjoyed like being scary, but we did not do anything that awful. So, being able to kind of like build on what you actually did was fun. And some of these stories, like that one in particular, was written during like Me Too era stuff. And, like Me Too largely, I would say is a good thing. But what a lot of the stuff pissed me off because it felt like women weren't allowed to be evil. And I didn't like that. Like, it's like, well, I have the strength to be evil and manipulative and to make people uncomfortable on purpose. And then I had also seen things like that, like my friend physically abuse her boyfriend and have it be excused because she was a cute girl. And that is something that upsets me, which is that men are not given the room for sexual assault and domestic abuse, and in some ways, like mental health. So I think I was like also being kind of like reactive too.
It's perfect. I mean, and I think whatever reaction it brings up for the reader, it reveals more about the reader than it does about you. And
But that
that's
story has kind of horrified me in retrospect because I'm like, wait, these girls are like acting like sexual assault is a fun party game. And it's like, wait, that's the point of the story. Just kind of like missing the point of your own writing and then getting it. And then, it's kind of funny how blind you can be to what's going on in your own writing sometimes.
well, yeah, I agree, but I also think it's kind of perfect that you don't have to say, oh, by the way, I know this is bad behavior. By the way, I didn't really do this. By the way, kids, this isn't all right. And I myself would not really do this. And this is how you should feel about this. It just puts it out there and lets it rest transparently. And that is pretty fucking great.
The Hazel story where the grandmother is given the perspective, like in some ways, that is the most literally true story, the grandmother's perspective, but in some ways it's the most made up story because that, like, I genuinely did that. I tried all these different like methods to channel my grandmother, and then I wrote them down and then I put them in that story. And so, like, am I getting psychic? Probably not. It's probably my imagination, but they were all like things that I saw when I was like meditating or staring at a candle or whatever. So, I was just kind of relaying what I saw in my head. So
Well,
totally made up and then also just like transcribing what happened, what I saw.
okay, I have a couple of one, explain what that story is.
So there's two narratives, I guess. One is a granddaughter and then one is a grandmother. And so it's two columns. So one's column on the side of the page is the granddaughter, and then the other one is the grandmother. And they're kind of little vignettes of different years. And so the more contemporary one, the granddaughter, is trying to figure out about her grandmother, who she's never met. She died before she was born, and she's heard a lot of things about because the grandmother was awful. And then just kind of the grandmother as an actual person and her side of the story. And that's true. My grandmother was bipolar. She was abusive. She died before I was born. I've only ever heard like snippets, and I've always wondered about her. The biggest thing I was interested in was that I identified with this woman I'd never met who I'd been told was abusive in multiple ways. And I, saw myself in her and wondered that if I'd been born, however many years she was born before me, would I be abusive? Would I do the things that she did? I don't know. So I just think that's kind of interesting to identify with someone that you've only ever really been told is horrible. And so that was like, oh, I want to write about that. That seems like I don't understand that.
Yeah, that was beautiful. That's where it's like that to me, the only way to really deal with this is to write, because then you can pull back the lens and step into somebody else's perspective and being able to pull back. And I've had people say, well, your mother was so this and that, and it was like, well, okay, you have to understand what she came from and what the grandparents came from. And once you can do that effectively, it really changes everything. Where the point isn't what was done to you, but like what was done to them that they didn't do to you and why they might have done what they did. The compassion that it took to be able to go in and allow her to go back in and let me give you a voice other than bitch, than cunt. It and knowing that in a different set of circumstances we would be that person, with that
And I,
label.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I think it's also interesting to kind of see how it plays out in different generations. Because, like, my cousin, there's just one of her and one of me in that side of the family. And both of us, I think, have like her even more so than I, just unconventional lives that I think we're doing pretty well and like pretty healthy, given the circumstances. So being able to kind of break out of that repression, and then like my uncle was in the mental hospital for 2 years and was brilliant, but barely was able to function and died young. So being able to slowly improve, and now in our generation, it's not like we had easy, perfect lives, but we made it out pretty darn well.
There's so much where the narrator of this book, it feels like so desperately looking for what to latch on to, like what to be a part of. Like it's like that, are you my mother? And also defining herself by what she's not. Like, I'm not like that cunt. And experimenting with different um groups of people and what's safe and what's not. And as the parent in me was like, oh my God, don't hang with that guy. Don't do, oh God. So do you want to read a little bit from those type of?
Sure. I thought that I'd read just like the very first section of Roadkill, because that's short and I think will do the trick.
All right.
Um, so Roadkill. I killed a cat before I left. I was supposed to go home real quick, get out of my work clothes, grab my bag. The sun was at a bad angle, slicing through the dirty windshield into my eyes, and I didn't see the cat until it was too late. The cat didn't look too bad, lying there like it could just be sleeping, except for its right eye, which was pooling in blood. It breathed in and out, loud and jagged. I stood over it. It didn't lift its head or even look at me. A jeep drove past as I was standing there, two girls a few years younger than me. They probably went to my old high school, the one I dropped out of a year before, long blonde hair and light tans, bikinis tied in knots around their necks. The jeep was brand new, shiny white, pink and yellow daisies appliqued to the back. They pulled over. Fuck, I said. They're going to come over here and make me feel bad about the cat. Oh my God, one of the girls yelled. Oh my God, the other girl yelled. I thought for a second that the cat was theirs. The one in the cutoffs felt around its neck for a collar. The cat was still doing the jagged breathing. What did you do? The one in the miniskirt yelled at me. She was slightly less attractive than the other one, bigger nose, smaller chin. It ran in front of my car, I said. I tried to sound sad. I felt horrible, the sucking feeling in my gut and shaky hands. The sun was in my eyes. I couldn't see shit. I was about to tell them I wasn't speeding or anything, and it wasn't my fault, but it was clear that they didn't care. Oh my God, one of them yelled again. We have to take it to the vet, the other said. It was after 5 and the vet around the corner was closed. Blood was spilling out of the cat's eye onto the pavement. The girls cradled the cat, one at the legs, the other the head, like a heavy, sacred object. They carted it over to the back of the Jeep, not seeming to care if they stained their cute clothes with its blood. They drove off without saying anything to me. There was blood on the pavement just a little bit, a splotch the size of a lima bean. I had an urge to touch it, but I didn't want to touch it, so I got back in my car. There was nothing else to do. I drove home. I changed. I got on the train. I had a flask of cheap vodka, and my silver pill case was full. I couldn't stop thinking about the bloody eye. I shut my eyes, and it was still there, red and wet. I bought a bottle of orange juice at the snack bar, drank the vodka, ate 2 pills. The setting sun skimmed off the ocean, a bright orange globe behind my eyelids. I felt like shit. I fell asleep.